Do Lord, Lord, remember me. Do Lord, Lord, remember me. Do Lord, remember me. Now, do Lord, remember me. Do Lord, Lord, remember me. Do
Amongst the busyness of everyday life, few people recognize the significance of the historical events that have preceded them. Go to any fine university such as this and ask any student about an event like the Nat Turner Rebellion, and they probably wouldn't be able to tell you what occurred. An event like this is important to teach, considering that a Pulitzer Prize-winning novel was written about the event, sparking serious, intelligent debate. Before we begin understanding the teaching process, we must understand the historical event itself. Where better to go than the glorious Gannett Center, the epicenter of historical knowledge in Redlands? Let's go inside and hear from Professor James Sandos, an expert on historical issues of such high regard.
Nat Turner's Rebellion was the largest uprising of African American slaves in the history of the United States. It occurred in rural Virginia in 1826. And Turner was himself a very controversial figure. People were trying to figure out how this could possibly come to happen. White people had managed to delude themselves into thinking that blacks had accepted slavery, that there was no discontent, that everybody was more or less happy. And Nat Turner was a fellow who had had a rather reasonable time, if such a word can be used, in slavery. He'd not had any terrible masters. The punishments he'd received, he actually thought he deserved, because he'd run away and then come back. He was a man of mystery and a man deeply committed to a sense of religious purpose. He read the Bible frequently, he read it well, and he wasn't a self-taught literate black, nor was he taught to read and write by any white people. He learned it and was taught it by his parents. So when we dig into the Nat Turner Rebellion and the Nat Turner story, you get a picture of slavery that stands a great difference from the traditional Southern view that slaves were happy and dumb, or the view that slaves were relentlessly abused by their masters. Instead, you get a much more complex and rich story of a man finding a way to use his religious convictions, rooted deeply in the Old Testament, to inspire an uprising designed to free his black community and, by extension, all slaves wherever his uprising army would find them.
Nat Turner was captured in November of 1831. Shortly after his incarceration, Nat was brought to trial for his part in planning the rebellion. Before the trial, Nat dictated his feelings about the uprising to a lawyer named Thomas Gray. In fact, this gem of an historical document still survives today, reminding us of what Nat Turner himself had to say about this important moment in history. Over 100 years after the rebellion took place, author William Styron put pen to paper and crafted his own version of Nat's story. This novel, entitled The Confessions of Nat Turner, brought Styron a Pulitzer Prize, public fame, and intense criticism. Let's return to our resident expert in the Gannett Center for further intellectual analysis.
Well, I think that Styron's novel is one of those things that everyone must read, but only if they've been properly grounded in the facts of the Nat Turner uprising. Because if you read it, knowing what really happened, you realize how deceitful this is. Despite the fact that it won a Pulitzer Prize and the people all thought it was quite wonderful back in the late 1960s, it is a pile of garbage. It misrepresents the past massively. It has Nat Turner, for example, being taught to read by a white child in a household where he was a slave. It has him made out to be religiously confused and uncertain. It makes him sexually ambivalent, which of course was very comforting to white people back in the 60s at the time when the Black Panthers were showing a kind of sexual outrageousness and a presentation of arms that really called to mind the Nat Turner uprising. So Styron's book is a book of deceit, but if you don't know that, you get sucked into it because, well, I find it to be written in what I would call florid prose, very red, almost purple prose. It is nonetheless engaging. It moves along. And if you know nothing other than this, you would come away thinking, well, this must be the story. Just as we so frequently find when people look at movies or some television programs for the past, those versions of the past, I can guarantee you almost invariably do not accurately represent it.
Now that we have a better understanding of who Nat Turner was and the controversy surrounding Styron's text, you can now learn how to effectively teach this and similar text in your high school classroom. This unit plan is designed in 3-week segments with a final project emphasizing the essence of the unit, which is the influence of Styron's novel that it has on our ideas about race relations. Students will answer the following prompt. How does Styron's representation of Nat Turner prompt us to think about race relations?
Step 1. Pre-reading strategies. On Monday, the first day of the unit, students will be working both in pairs and as an entire class to discuss their initial impressions of the novel. One pre-reading exercise will be a whole class discussion about Styron's title and the opinions it may cause one to form prematurely.
As you can gather from the discussion, the title causes us to form an opinion about the novel and its main character.
Step 2. Vocabulary strategies. In the novel, Styron purposefully uses a particular language style. This style brings a specific personality to the characters. Read along and listen to the style of vocabulary used in this segment of the text.
Quit pestering about your daddy, says my mother. What make you think I knows where he done run off to? What his name? I done told you that 20 times. His name Nathaniel, just like you. I done told you that. Now quit pestering about your daddy. When he run off? When the last time I seen him? Law me, child, that's so long ago I ain't got no recollection. Let's see. Well, Mars Alves, he died 11 years ago, bless his name. And seemed like 'twa'n't but a year after that when me and your daddy was courting. Now there was some fine looking man. Mars Alves done brought him into Petersburg for to work stripping the logs in the mill. But your daddy, he too smart for that kind of low nigger work. And he too good looking too, with them flashing bright eyes and a smile. Wild child, your daddy had a smile that would light up a barn. No, he too good for that low kind of work, so Mars Alves, he brung up your daddy to the big house and commenced him into butling. Yes, he was the number 2 butler, helping out little morning when first I knowed your daddy. That was the year before Mars Alves died. And me and your daddy lived right here together that time, a whole year it was, right in this room. But quit pestering about that, I tells you, boy. How I know where he done run off to?
What does this vocabulary imply about the character of Nat Turner? You may have found that it hints at a father who was not present, enhancing the stereotype of single-parent slave households. In addition, it creates a specific dialect for Nat's mother, perhaps suggesting illiteracy, furthering the slave stereotype. Step 3. Comprehension. Now that we've examined Styron's use of vocabulary, let us compare Styron's work to Turner's personal account of the event.
The Lord has shown me things that had happened before my birth, and my father and mother strengthened me in this my first impression, saying in my presence I was intended for some great purpose, which they had always thought from certain marks. My attention was not directed. The manner in which I learned to read and write not only had great influence on my own mind as I acquired it with the most perfect ease, so much so that I have no recollection whatever of learning the alphabet, but to the astonishment of my family, one day when a book was shown to me to keep me from crying, I began spelling the names of different objects.
Did you hear the difference in Nat's speech? How is Nat's narrative different from Styron's use of vocabulary? What does Nat say about his father and mother? Take a moment to discuss this in your classroom.
That concludes the lesson on strategies for effectively teaching the Nat Turner Rebellion. Hopefully this video helped expose some of the historical controversies that lead to rich material for classroom learning and discussion.
For further information on how to better teach this subject and others, go to the Just Read Now website and click on the link for the How to Teach video series.